Okay, one of the things we got to do to the door to get access to the screws to bolt the hinges on is take this piece out here that Rob's got loosened up. It's a forward guide for the window, and he'll pull that out of there. Okay, and then we're going to open up the door so we can see where the fasteners were that held that in place. There's one, and then the other one is down here.
See them on this side here.
Okay, so that the door stays in the right place. We got the door closed, and the hinges are still attached. And Rob's going to weld a little tab of metal in here to hold the door where it belongs. Same thing down at the bottom. He's going to weld in a little piece of metal, and then he'll be able to take the hinge bolts out, so that the door, this way the door stays right where it belongs. Okay, Rob's welded a little tab on up here to keep the top of the door in the correct position before he takes out the hinge bolts. And he's welded on a bit of a tab down here at the bottom of the door to keep the door in position. Now he's taking the bolts out from the hinges. Here's one of them's already out, still one to go here. And so he's taking the bolts out. One of the bolts goes in from the inside. This one back here goes in from the inside, so you have to take the trim piece off from inside. You could do that before you actually weld the door closed. But Rob didn't think of that.
No, Dave didn't think of that.
Don't pay any attention to that guy in the background. He don't know what he's talking about. Anyway, so we got to get back in there and do that. On the other side, we'll do it correctly. Okay, Rob's got the hinges out. You can see where the hinges were bolted on. And then Dave's going to stick the new hinge, the vertical door hinge, up in here. Okay, now that's basically where it's going to go. We're going to be trying to get the axis of this pin straight up and down, and we're going to be, if you take a look in here, you can see that the hinge mounting pad up in here doesn't match up with the door, and then down at the bottom it doesn't match up with the door, the holes that are in the door. Up here at the top, one of these holes comes close to the Fiero hole, this hole right here. The other one is way off. You can see the hole over here on this, the threaded. Let me see if I can see it. You can see the threaded hole back over here, and the hole that's in the hinge is here. And then going down towards the bottom, there's a step in the Fiero chassis from top to bottom, and this is stepped in down here at the bottom. And Rob will have to put weld in a steel bracket on the back of the hinge to make up for this difference, so the hinge stands straight up and down.
But neither of the bolt holes line up.
And neither of the bolt holes line up, but Rob will take care of that. He's got experience doing that. Pull it back out, Dave. See this pad right here where this hinge bolted on, and the pad down here on this hinge, this one's further in on the car than the top one is. There's a step right here. There's a step where it goes down in here. So there'll have to be some steel on the back side of the hinge to make that fit. Back on the videos, Rob has the hinge stuck up in here, and he's got the one hole in it. Dave was holding the hinge up in there. Right now, we got one bolt going through the one hole. And I'm going to take a real close look inside here. And you can see these holes don't match up. And down here at the bottom, these are not going to match up. Kind of hard to see in there, but it's in there. And I wanted to point out that the welded tabs are on, the hinges are off, and this door is just solid. I can pull on it, and the door's not going to go anywhere. And it's going to stay just like that till we're all done with the hinge. Then we'll cut those tabs off, and the door is going to hinge right where it belongs. All right, so now we're looking at the hinge. We're looking at where Rob is right now. This is a pretty complicated process, so you're going to have to pay attention. The bracket, this arm part of the hinge assembly, we had to take off. It's going to have to come off, and because the mounting pads that are on the ends of it, these pads don't match up to Fiero doors, and we're going to be putting a piece in there that matches up and uses the original screw holes that are in the Fiero doors. And we also have, I put in a screwdriver here to prop this piece back where we want it. That's just so that I don't have to hold it and try to shoot video at the same time. We still have the one bolt in the top. And this is where the hinge is going to be, and you'll see that arm that I was just showing you is cut off of here. And Rob's got this scribe now he's going to be cutting, if you can, I hope you can see those lines, they're going to be cutting right down here and then over, so they take off this bottom thing, because we have to make that, you can see the hinge stands out. See, I can get my finger behind the hinge here. That's going to have to be spaced out. There's going to be a piece of steel plate that's going to bolt on to the chassis here, and then it's going to weld to the back side of this area where he's cut this off. And I know we cut the arm off. We are going to be reusing this arm, but it's actually going to be flipped over the other direction, and there's going to be new pads welded on to match up with the hinge holes that are in the door itself. Okay, to extend the hinges out, to extend the hinge bracket out, we have to butt weld a piece of steel on it to get the screws further away from the pivot point. And what Rob has set up here is he has the piece of metal cut that he needs to put in, and he's got bevel cut, pretty good sized bevel cut on both the hinge assembly and on the piece of metal that he's got. He's got them both clamped to a piece of aluminum flat stock. And that way he can weld it all along the edge here and get a good weld. Down at the other end, where we told you about cutting it off, there's a piece that's going to weld on the back of here that's going to have the bolt holes in it it's going to bolt on. Well, that piece is already bolted to the chassis. We're going to go look at that in a second. And this end of it will be welded when it's put onto the car. Okay, we're back over here at the car, and this is the lower hinge plate that Rob and Chris made. It's 3/8 of an inch thick to space the hinge out down at the bottom. You'll recall we talked about that. And it's bolted on. One of the bolts comes from the inside, and the other one's from the outside, and it's bolted on. And then you see where it's been buff shiny. That's when we bring the other hinge over here and get it bolted on. This will weld to it. It will tack weld it on here, so it's in exactly the right place. Remembering now that we got these pieces of steel on here holding this door in place, and it ain't moving. I can shake the car, but I can't move the door. The whole point is get that door where you want it and make everything, and then we'll cut those straps when it's time to open the door. Okay, so this has been welded and it's been ground flush on both sides. And the back side of it has to be especially ground flush because it's going to fit up against the chassis, and you want it to fit flat up against the chassis. And we're going to go try it on. To help in getting the holes in the right place, because the original hinge had 2 holes in it, of course, and we know that this top hole here is one that lined up with what we had in the car. It would bolt in. So we're using the original hinge as a template to drill the second hole, and trying to get the hinge square to the axis of the pin. And of course, if we're going to drill the hole out, it's going to end up being a little bit bigger than these holes that are in the bracket. That'll give us an idea where the second hole goes for the pin, or for the hinge. Okay, now you can see he's got the hinge bolted in with these top 2 holes. And it's sitting in there just about like it's going to be when it's finished. Notice the pin is pretty much vertical. And then down here at the bottom, there's still a gap between the bottom of this bracket and the face of this other bracket. So we're going to build that up, and then these are going to get welded together. Right now, he's working on the piece that's going to go in here to replace that wishbone piece that we cut out. He's actually going to use the wishbone we cut out, but he's going to invert it the other direction, flip it over upside down, and we'll show you that when we get to it. But you can hear the saw running in the background or making parts right now. Okay, we're still in the process. We've made a couple of 3/8 inch thick steel plates that are going to bolt onto the original bolt holes in the door. And there's one down here on the bottom that's already bolted on. And then we're going to be putting this piece in, which is the piece we took out of there, only it's turned over, right? Yep, it's flipped over end for end. And so this used to be down when the hinge was, before we cut the hinge originally. Oh, this is the one from the other side. Okay, that's the way he's going to do it. So the one from the other side is this piece here. We're swapping sides with them. and this will weld on right here. First of all, we'll get these pieces bolted in. Then this piece will weld on right here, and it'll be tack welded on up here. Then we'll pull the whole thing out, weld it up real good, and it should work. Show a little bit of view of it. You see what it looks like. See, here's a piece that we welded on the end of this hole. Remember we did the hinges earlier? Drilled the holes earlier? Okay, we'll be back. Okay, we've taken the hinge off so we can make a little bit of clearance for this plate in here. And one thing I didn't mention to you earlier was that if you see the sheet metal here is a step above the sheet metal right in this area. Same thing here, it steps down from here to here. And so we had when the hinge was just on there, we had a washer behind the brackets here in these two positions, so that that surface would be out equal with this surface. So it'd be out flush with this surface, so the hinge doesn't bind. So the hinge doesn't bind in this direction, you know, like this. When it's folded up here, it would pull away out here because of this line right here. So we put washers on each one of these two screw heads behind the hinge.
You got to make one adjustment.
Yeah, well, we do have the slotted bracket on the top, so we can adjust it a little bit too. Yeah, here's you know, the washers were in like this, and between the hinge and the chassis, and that made that surface flush with this surface on the left here. Made it flush with this metal surface here. Now in here we're putting washers behind this plate that Chris is putting in, and go ahead. And the reason we're doing that is because all the metal in the hinge assembly is going to flex a little bit when we're all done, and when we cut that door loose. And we're putting some washers in there so that the washers are about 90 thousandths thick, and that way we got about 90 thousandths of preload on the door. When we put this thing together for the last time, we probably won't use the washers. And that means it'll pull that door in tight against the hinge again. Because all this metal that's in this hinge assembly is going to flex. Believe it or not, it will. It did on the last one. And so we're putting the washers behind this bracket. What? Okay, like I said, we put washers behind this bracket. We don't intend on having the washers here when we're done, but we figure there's going to be enough flex in this whole mechanism that it's going to pull the door, that the door is going to sag just a little bit because of all the flex. Now, I was going to show you these pieces before we put them together. This is we're going to call this a yoke. This is the yoke from the other side. It's going to be welded onto those two brackets that are up inside the door frame. This is the hinge assembly. We will be pulling it out again. We'll be looking at it again because it's going to be painted and all the welding is going to be finished and ground. But you see we have a step here. This piece steps back quite a bit. That's because of the difference in the step between this pad area and this pad area. This one sticks out further. It looks like about a ½ inch. And we want the hinge to be straight up and down when looked at from the front of the car. And let's see, we're going to put it together and see what it looks like. I'm on live. Here we've got the yoke in here. Did I call it a yoke before? Yep. Well, it's a yoke today. And you'll see the metal's ground here. We've got a little bit of space between the yoke and the metal plates because that's where Rob's going to be doing all the welding. And same thing down at the bottom. And then all along this edge here by the clamp, and then around on the back side, we'll be welding it back in here too when we take the hinge back off. Okay, Rob's gone in there and burned some wire, and we got a little bit more than a tack weld around the top, a little bit more than a tack weld around the bottom, and a tack weld plus maybe a little to weld this yoke piece onto the arm. And we're going to pull the whole hinge assembly off, including the plates that are going to bolt it onto the door now, and going to weld it up really nice. And then we're going to put it back on the car and cut loose the door and see if it works. Okay, all the welding is done. They welded this up, and it hasn't been painted yet. We want to leave it unpainted for the video because if it's all painted black, you can't see it as well. and it's all bolted back on there. Now we're going to cut the metal that's holding this door on and see if the door works. So hang on, we'll cut the metal and be back. Okay. There you go. She's open. I'm going to cut these little tabs off, one on the top, one on the bottom, and stick some body parts on there and see how it works.
Up a little more.
Okay, so we have the door open. It clears the body on the outside.
Yes.
We do have a little issue on the inside where the button. Whoa, can you see this, I wonder?
I've got a static of it. What?
Could you hold the light, Rob?
Yeah.
Okay, this little button here that controls when the door comes open, it's adjustable. However, on this kit, they screwed that button in and then spot welded it on the back side. So we got to build this thing back out, because if you swing the door in to where it gets up against the button, then the door's touching the fender, and that's not a good thing, because that means that when you swing the door out, this is the pin that when you swing the door out, it keeps the door from going open until it has enough clearance. So that pin has to be moved out a little bit. It's not something we can't handle, but now you can see the inside of the door, and but we have to bring that pin out. Looks like about 3/8 of an inch, so that the door clears the bodywork when it opens. Okay, we're looking at this bump stop again. This bump stop right here is supposed to stick out far enough that when you open the door can't go up. The door's supposed to ride against the button, so that the door can't go up until it's a certain distance open. We need the door to open about 3/8 of an inch more than the end of this bump stop. You see this part of the hinge rubs against the bump stop as the door is being opened until it gets out past the end of the bump stop, and then it allows the door to go up. Right now, this surface is about 3/8 of an inch too far in towards the center of the car, and the door starts to open before we want it to open. Now, last time we had one of these hinge sets, this piece was adjustable. You could just unscrew it and adjust it to some degree. This one here is spot welded in on the back side, so we're probably going to end up having to build up a weld on the end of this, and then try to grind the weld smooth, make it look good. But we got to come out. We need about 3/8 of an inch more on top of this button, and like I said, the button's welded in. On the back side, they put a spot weld on it, and so there's no adjustment there. There's no thread sticking through the plate that we can use to adjust this out and put some washers behind it. Last time we installed a set of these doors, like I said, this piece wasn't welded in, it was just screwed in. So now Rob's going to open the door, and this is what happens with the bump stop, is that the door, the strut's not on the door now, so Rob's picking up the door, but the door would rub up against this bump stop till it gets to this point right here, and then the door would go up. Well, at this point, if the door is going up, it's too close to the bodywork. We want the door to come out further. That's why it's supposed to be adjustable. So the door will be, if Rob just opens the door, you see, keep opening, Rob. You see, it comes way out to here before it needs to go up. You know, that's how much a pivot is in the hinge. It's got a little bit of adjustment on it, but this bump stop needs to come out more so that the door doesn't start to go up before we want it to go up, because then we worry about hitting bodywork. Other than that, it looks like we're pretty much done. We're going to take this hinge off and do some modification of this bump stop and paint the hinge and get ready to stick it back on first thing in the morning, and then go over and finish the other side. Rob and Chris have been working on the other side while we've been working on this side too. So the other side is just now getting the hinge fitted, and it's part way along, you know, halfway along already. So anyway, we'll be finishing this up in the morning with paint and everything, show you what it looks like. And then Dave gets put the body back on. Additionally, my engineering advisors have advised me that I should point this out. Once we get this nub here adjusted out to where we want it, then we're going to adjust the hinge with this Allen screw right here, so that the hinge only opens up towards me as far as clearing this nub, and then doesn't open any further than that, because we don't want the hinge to come out, the backside of the hinge down in this area, to come out and hit the inside of the fender. So it's a balance between having this pin out far enough that the door clears the bodywork in this area when it starts to go up, and not have it come out so far that it hits the bodywork down towards the bottom. That's what this adjustment screw here is for here. Oh, video. Well, so this is what the hinge looks like when it's done.
That's a bolt-on hinge.
Yeah, now it's a bolt-on hinge. Okay, we have the hinge put together. This is on the right-hand side of the car. Thought we'd show you this. It's put together the same as it was on the other side of the car. And go ahead and close her down and see how pretty it is. Okay. Anyway, that's about it. We're going to got to put the rest of the interior trim in on this side and put the bodywork back on this side, and then we'll show you a little bit of video of the thing outside with the doors operational and the owner of the car all happy and smiles and everything, and then we'll be done with this video. Okay, we're going to check out and see how the doors work on this chop top car, and Dave's going to take you for a little tour of the car.
Oh my, Santa put some hinges on my car. All right.
Here we go.
Alrighty.